Today we're talking about how young entrepreneurs can build agency and fulfillment. Welcome to All in Wellness, where we explore the journey to holistic well-being. I'm your host, Amanda Lamage, and I'm thrilled to have you join me on this exciting adventure towards a healthier and happier life. We'll uncover valuable insights, expert advice, and inspiring stories that empower you to take charge of your well-being. So whether you're looking to enhance your physical health, nurture your mental resilience, or simply find a moment of peace in your day, you're in the right place. Let's embark on this journey together, embracing all the possibilities that wellness has to offer. Hello, and welcome to another amazing episode of the All in Wellness Show. Today we have a fabulous guest with us, Jack Wagoner. Hello, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Amanda.
Absolutely. I'm happy to have you on their podcast, and I want to read a little bit about your background and let our listeners hear about your journey. Jack is a 19-year-old TEDx speaker, and he's the host of the Grateful podcast and ranked in the global top 2%. He's the creator of Duality and Gratitude and Ambition, a framework on what drives high performers, and works alongside Chris Shembra and the 747 team, facilitating gratitude experiences for some of the world's largest organizations. Jack moved to France alone at age 16. He launched his first company at 17 and now teaches the next generation how to build agency. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what guided you to become a host on your podcast show and maybe a transition from being a CEO. Can you share with our listeners today?
Yeah, so my journey, it started a long time ago, as all of our journeys start, but I really started getting into the concepts of mindset and growth and creating the best possible life when I was around 15 years old, and I decided to move to France for my junior year of high school. I was a high performer in pretty much every capacity. I had incredible grades. I was a three-sport athlete, and I wanted more. I wanted to do more. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. We want to do more. We feel like once we achieve more, we're going to feel like more on the inside, right? And so that was my pattern growing up. I moved to France. I didn't know anything of French. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know anybody on the continent. So I was alone. I lived with a host family. And I was traveling a bit. I was having fun, but I wasn't making any money. So I made a goal. I wanted to do three things in my year abroad in France for my junior year. I wanted to learn French. I wanted to make friends, and I wanted to make money. So fast forward 8 months, it's March of 2024, and I had done all those things. I was about to test for fluency in the French language, national certification. I had an incredible group of friends, and I had started an online company, a YouTube automation company. I had 4 employees just from my Mac Air, my old Mac Air in my bedroom, and I was making money. And here we are. I'm on top of the world out here. Look at me from the outside. I'm doing great. Yet, for some reason, I had no idea why, I didn't feel any better than I had before I had achieved those things. And that realization left me with such curiosity. I needed to find out why it was that when I achieved all of this that I thought would make me happier, I wasn't happier. And so I started asking myself these questions. I started writing these things down. I started listening to podcasts or continued listening to podcasts. And I remember one day I was on my bike on the way back from the rock climbing gym. I was wearing these khakis, not the smartest decision. It started downpouring. And I was listening to Ed Milet and Jay Shetty in this AirPod, in my left AirPod. And I was like, I want to start a podcast. So that's what I did. I said, I want to ask as many people as I can, these people like Jay and Ed, about this idea that I had that by achieving more, we weren't going to be more happy. I created what I called the duality of gratitude and ambition, the idea that you have to be both extremely grateful for what you have and ambitious towards bigger and better things in order to live a fulfilled life. And I started asking people about it. And here we are, a few years later, I'm 19. I've recorded over 165 episodes. Now with some of the biggest creators, thought leaders, authors, entrepreneurs in the world, and I understand so much more about the world now. And what that one decision of starting a podcast led me to is incredible. Just this week I was facilitating an event for one of the world's largest companies in Rhode Island, and it's pretty incredible what you can do when you just make one decision.
I agree. And I love that you talk about gratitude. That's definitely part of my daily practice. I would say, like, I transition into that mindset of no matter where you're at in your life, finding that gratitude daily is so important. And as you mentioned, connecting with others and getting other perspectives. I think it's so great what you're doing and helping others. And I like to elaborate on, you mentioned your framework for building agency in young people in a world where they are called the anxious generation. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. That's the label we have, right? I'm 19, I'm a part of Gen Z, and people think of us as being the anxious generation, the lazy generation, the ones that are just being fired or not even getting jobs, the ones that are still living with our parents, the first generation in over a century to make less money than our parents, right? That's the label that we've gotten. And it's pretty true. Statistically, our generation is not doing that well. But at the same time, we have these certain outliers that are succeeding more than we've ever seen young people succeed. We have entrepreneurs making tens of millions of dollars on their AI companies before they graduate high school. And so there's this real disparity between the polar opposites of achievement and success among my generation. And
Mhm.
I believe that the real trait that makes up the difference is agency. We all know that we have the technology at our disposal to pretty much create whatever we want. If we have an idea, we can make it a company, right? The
Mhm.
barrier to entry for success has never been lower. But we're also trapped by these algorithms that we have and these billion-dollar companies, trillion-dollar companies trying to keep us hooked onto a screen, trying to literally profiting off of our attention. How many times have you paid Instagram or TikTok? For most people, zero, right?
Mhm.
Then how are they making that money? Because they're profiting off of your attention. And so that's the trap that my generation falls up against. But when we can start to reclaim agency, that unlocks incredible possibilities because we can now connect with anybody in the world via a phone or a laptop. And so I believe that the things that a young person can do to create that agency and go from a less agentic life, maybe someone that's doom scrolling or falling into a trap of brain rot, as Gen Z would say, and if they want to move to a more successful outcome, like we've seen so many people do, it really just takes four steps. The first of which is to initiate. I think one of the most important things and one of the patterns I've seen among all the most successful people I've talked to is that they went and they made a decision before they knew how that decision would end up, what the result of that would be, what other people would think of them for doing that thing, right? You have to jump before the net appears and hope that the net's going to appear in some ways.
Very
And
true.
so that can come down to even just raising your hand in the classroom, right? You don't know if you have the right answer, but you have to take that risk. You have to initiate. So once you initiate, then you have to do the hard thing. That's step two. It's really easy in the world we live in today, especially with our human nature, to seek out the most comfortable option. But oftentimes, the most comfortable option is where the least growth is going to come from. And so we have to seek out the uncomfortable thing that allows us to grow. And when I say uncomfortable thing, I don't just mean the easy uncomfortable thing. We all have something we're good at. For me, the easy uncomfortable thing was going for a run in the morning because I'm good at having discipline for myself physically, right? That's
Mhm.
why I'm more fit. But that wasn't the thing that got me the results that I wanted. That uncomfortable thing was posting every single day. And that was another, I had no idea how I would be perceived. And that has changed my life incredibly. Now, the third thing is you have to do that consistently. A lot of people want to just do one hard thing and get the instant success. My generation feels in some ways entitlement because we compare ourselves every day to the people that are successful. And we're comparing our gag reels, our everyday moment, the mundane moments of our lives, to the highlight reels, the perfectly curated moments of everybody else online. And so we have to actually play the long game. We have to do the hard thing consistently over time, even when we're not seeing results for it. And then, lastly, and I believe that this is the most important thing, we have to find joy in the ordinary. And that comes down to gratitude
Hmm.
because we are never, ever going to live a life that looks extraordinary at every single moment. There's always going to be hard times, there's always going to be mundane moments. And so, if we want to live a life that feels extraordinary, we have to figure out how to do that in the mundane when it doesn't look extraordinary. Like I said, we're comparing our gag reels to everybody else's highlight reels. Nobody is living party in beautiful
Hmm.
clear water with no problems every moment of their lives.
And
If
it's
you
not
want to
what you
live
see always.
exactly, so if you want to live a meaningful life, you have to figure out how to find meaning in the
Hmm.
mundane. When you wake up in the morning, when you're drinking your coffee, when you spill your coffee over yourself, right? And so those are the four steps. It's initiate, do the hard thing, do it consistently, and find joy in the ordinary. And I believe that if a young person does all four of those things, they will build a life that looks successful on paper and feels good on the inside.
Yeah, I think it's great to put that message out there for so many that need it. And you're focusing on the duality of gratitude and ambition and how to always go for more, just while you're staying grounded in the present and being in the present moment. Do you want to elaborate
Yes.
on that more as well?
Yeah, that's one of the most important things that I've learned in my entire journey. And that's what the journey's about. It's about balancing being grateful for what you have right now while still striving for more. See, when I was an overachiever, I realized, and I still am, that's still my natural paradigm. I realized that the easiest thing to do for me is to just achieve, not in like a I'm really good at achieving and it comes easily to me, but the first thing I would do when I did something well or I got a reward or whatever was to set the bar higher, right? It was not to celebrate the win, but to criticize the win and what I did wrong. And I could never feel truly accomplished because every time that I did something that I should feel accomplished about, I set another goal even further away for me to feel that. I kept deferring the celebration, I kept deferring the joy, the pride, the gratitude. And I realized that was no way to live. The only thing that we're ever truly guaranteed in life is the present moment. It's where our feet are. It's right here, right now. Our life is a constant string of the present. And by constantly deferring it to the future, I wasn't truly living. If you want to truly live, and you are a high achiever, because I realized that I was never going to stop setting the bar higher. That's how I'm wired. I'm
I'm the
never going to
same
stop.
way. And it's
Right.
difficult if you don't acknowledge and you have others congratulating you and you haven't even celebrated yet. You're focused on the next goal. That's not a good place to always be in. Sometimes it takes a third party, someone who's impartial, to say, hey, have you celebrated yet? That's a big win. And it's eye opening. I think when you are an overachiever, you're always a perfectionist, maybe. Just setting those high standards for yourself. It's hard to see the win. And I think the biggest one for me was failing first to be able to recognize a win. So, how do you recognize a win if you haven't failed, right? If you don't know anything different, if you're always winning, you can't
It's the
appreciate
contrast.
that win.
Interesting. That's a great point, Amanda. It's the contrast that allows you to appreciate the win, right? And that's why I think gratitude is so important. When you're able to be grateful for what you have right now and say, right now, this is enough. This is great. The present moment around me is amazing. Right now, I'm back at home in between the school year. So I'm in my childhood bedroom. And I obviously don't want to be recording podcasts in my childhood bedroom for the rest of my life. I have ambition for the future, right? I can be grateful for the chapter that I'm in. I can say this is amazing and I want
Exactly.
that in the future. And that is the key. That's the duality, you
It's
know?
so important. It really
Yeah.
is. You have to be able to evolve, right? And it's a process. It's not an instant you're there. And again, you wouldn't appreciate, I don't think, the journey. And I think we're never there. I think we're here and we're always improving. There's never, I got to get to there, right? Because, like you said, living in the present, it's so important to have gratitude and see this is maybe God's plan too. Maybe I have to learn this or go through that. Maybe I have to get through something else first to get to where I think I need to be. But I also think it's God's will. And it's also important to recognize the journey there. I don't know if
Yeah.
you feel the same.
Yeah. I think it's kind of acceptance. Did you see The Odyssey, the
I
movie?
did actually. I just saw it.
It's so good,
It's
right?
phenomenal. I highly recommend for anyone out there to, it opens up your mind and definitely your perspective.
You know that moment where he has to. This isn't a spoiler for anyone. It's right in the middle of the movie. Anyone that knows the Odyssey story knows this happens. But he has to sit or lay down on the raft and let the gods take him,
Hmm.
let the water to where he needs to be.
Incredible.
I think that's such a good metaphor for life and acceptance and realizing that, oh, he almost drowned. He had water coming over him, but there was nothing he could do. And while agency is so important, and we just talked about that, there is also the idea that sometimes what's happening to you right now, you don't have control over. And you just have to accept it and
Mm.
control what you can control. It's the whole Stoic philosophy. It's, for anyone that's familiar, it's the Alcoholics Anonymous philosophy, the serenity to accept what you can't change and the courage to change what you can.
Focus on what you can do. And for me, I just put so much trust in God and having the faith. That can be very hard, especially in our world right now. And be able to trust, the trust too is important. But I think, like you mentioned, just focusing on what you can do and not dwell on things you can't change, right? That's always a worst case scenario, but it's easier said than done, right? It's not an easy task if you're struggling with that. I think just taking the first step, like you said, just being aware and then taking the initiative is really important.
For you, how do you actually do that? How do you stay, I don't know, how do you surrender while still building and have agency? I think it's easy to talk about, but it's hard to do and apply.
It's so interesting because I've thought about that. I recently developed this, but looking back, I really have always been that way. My dad passed away when I was quite young, 9 years old. And I remember being so strong, even at his funeral, consoling my family and just being able to trust God. I've had quite a few instances in my life that were just traumatic or things similar to that. And so now looking back, it's interesting because I see that I was actually always strong. And I thought it was recently something I developed, but realizing that for me, I call it a higher power. You just kind of look up and you trust, okay, I'm going to let you lead the way and show me the way. And I think praying for me is so important to reveal, just to reveal what is it that you want me to see or what is the next step. And I think for me, that's something I was raised with a strong faith as well, but I think not everybody always practices the ability to trust and not have fear. I think fear is a big one. Trying to eliminate the fear and just trusting.
Yeah. Praying is, what's praying look like? How do you pray? I feel like I try to
Mhm.
do so. I wasn't raised religiously, but I become so much more faithful. I have a lot of faith and I kind of just talk. What do you do?
I think it's okay. It's different for everyone. It doesn't have to be according to scriptures. You don't have to be on your knees praying with your head down. And it's okay to just talk to God, honestly, out loud. You can talk to the Holy Spirit and just ask questions, or you can talk out loud. And when you start that initiation, you just find yourself feeling grounded, really asking for guidance there. And so I don't think it's necessarily, it has to be exactly a certain way. I think then you kind of overcomplicate it and you just want to feel present in the moment. You could be exercising. Maybe you're actually in a meeting and you're stressed and you're kind of doing a quick pray about what it is that you are struggling with. It doesn't have to be for a prolonged period of time. So I think there's not a stamp to put on it, right? It's different for everyone, depending on the scenario too.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how you said you don't have to have your head down because every time that I pray or meditate or talk to source, I keep my head up. I look
Mhm.
at the sky or the trees or the clouds, or even if I'm in my room, I look up.
And I've done that too when I had family. They were in the hospital and in the ICU, and I just kind of did the same. I actually looked up and it's okay, I'm trusting the higher power now. But how I was raised was in church. You kneel or you pray with your hands and you put your head down to pray. I think it's not always necessarily that God isn't going to punish us if we don't do it that way, right? I think it's good to thinking about the heavenly, like you mentioned, having your head upward, and I think it's good. I think it's just a good practice to incorporate if you've never tried. Your daily
Um,
routine, do you want to talk about?
yeah, my routine's changed over the years. It used to be extremely rigid. It was like 5 a.m. wake up every single day, go on a run, get back, take a cold shower, meditate, read a book for 30 minutes, and then start working. Right? That was my day every
Mhm.
single day. And I realized after missing it a few times and after maybe going to bed a little too late and waking up a little tired, I realized that when I missed that schedule, even though I was very consistent with it, the rest of my day was ruined. I had become so reliant on that 3-hour morning routine that it wasn't even helpful anymore. And so now I don't have any requirements besides obviously waking up. I I try to work out. I work out most mornings, whether that's lifting or running. I climb a lot of afternoons or play pickleball. I try to do something fun with friends socially every day, whether it's with my family or friends. I'm always trying to keep that social balance because that has become, in certain periods of my life, the real kryptonite of me. I work so hard that I'm so focused narrowly on my work that everything
Hmm.
else falls to the wayside and I burn out and I get literally physically sick. So I've built in time in my life where I am hanging out with friends or family and doing things fun or spending time in nature every single day,
Yeah, I
literally
love
every
that.
day. That's one of the things that I don't skip. And if I
Hmm.
do, if I miss one day, it's not like something I'm actually intentionally saying I'm doing this every day or scheduling. It happens. So if I miss one day, whatever, I do it the next. And then I'm also exercising and I'm also eating well and I'm also spending time with, I'm still in an in between phase of what I believe in, but the universe, God, spending time with the world. And at every day before I go to bed and when I wake up, I say thank you. I'm so
Hmm.
grateful for the opportunity I have to live the life that I love to live and impact the people in the way I do and have these incredible people around me. And I say some version of that every single day. And that's a non negotiable. And has become habitual. And I'll
Hmm.
find myself saying that in random moments throughout the day. And
Hmm.
that to me is pure gratitude. I don't have a written down gratitude practice anymore. My gratitude is that in the morning and at night and throughout the day, to the point where it's become subconscious. I believe that's the real point of everything we do, is
Right.
to make it habitual and develop a attitude of gratitude in every moment, no matter if you are consciously practicing it or if it's within the confines of your practice. So I think I've had a real journey from having a really structured routine and practice to trying to let that bleed into everything during my day. My meditations, I used to be way more consistent with them and I used to be less calm, ironically. And now I meditate some days an hour, some days 5 minutes, and I feel like it bleeds into everything.
Yeah, I do the same. And it just depends. Every day is different what you're doing, but at least try to get 4 times a day. Maybe it's like you said, 5 minutes, but and I think I want to bring up something that talking about the blessing and feeling gratitude for being able to connect with so many. Do you think sometimes maybe we're like you and I we're in similar paths? We may be chosen like to help. Maybe we need to help others, and that's part of God's plan. We're just the vessel. And so we're kind of sharing more of our own journey, but also getting others out there to hear about so many experiences and just connecting with them. How do you feel
Yeah,
about that?
I have always believed in, whether it's a egotistical way or not, I've always believed I was special and I'm here to help people and impact people. And yes, I believe that I had chills when you said that we're just a vessel. And to me, I have gotten some type of, call it woo woo or whatever. Every time I have the chills, I say that was truth. That
It's
was
pretty
meant to be
amazing.
said.
Yeah.
And I think when you said that, I got the chills. We are just vessels and
Mm-hmm.
we are meant to serve and bring our positive impact to the world through our stories, through our lessons, through our work. And whenever I have that in my heart, whenever I have that in my mind as my focus, my days are just full of so much brightness. It's really easy when you're working a lot to think about, to measure a day's success by how much you got from it. Yet, consistently, my best days and what I've noticed from the most successful people I've talked to, their best days are the ones where they gave the most to the world. And even if they did the same things, it's about the perspective they had through that. And so, yeah, I do believe that we are vessels to help people live their best lives.
I'm such a creature of habit the same ways. I always feel like I'm more accomplished if I give more than I receive, and that's always been my mindset. Sometimes we need the self-care as well, so we have to make sure we don't overdo that. You can be a caretaker and be more giving. That brings me to another thought of the most successful people out there tend to be givers naturally. Do you want to explore on that as well, or anything come to
Yeah.
mind?
Have you read The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and John David Mann?
I have not.
My mom has it right now, so I don't have it right here. It's one of the best books ever. I just talked to Bob on my podcast last week. I met John, the other co-author, 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
and it's basically a book. It's 120 pages. Anyone listening to this, please go out and buy it or rent it. It talks about breaking down the barriers of the beliefs that in order to be successful, you have to be a taker. I think I grew up with the idea that the richest people in the world were in some way evil because they had to wrong people to get that money. And you know what? It's not true actually. As Bob Berg told me on my podcast, the people that are successful and they're takers by nature actually succeeded in spite of who they are, because it's a lot easier to be successful when you give value to people, when you're kind, when people like you. And so, one of the most interesting things I've found by interacting with people at the top of the social, economic food chain, you could say, is that they're the most responsive people I've ever met. The more successful someone is, the more likely they're going to respond to me within a minute of me sending them a text or an email. It's crazy to me. And you know what is so fascinating? People right below that, the people that dream of getting to the top for the glory, for what it'll bring them socially, for the status. People, they don't give you time. They say,
No.
I don't have time for you. And if they do give you time, they'll say, I have a 15-minute meeting. We can have a 15-minute meeting sharp, beginning and end.
Yeah.
And those people inadvertently have set the ceiling for themselves. They're never going to be up here for the most part. And I think that's just really.
Yeah, I think it's so true though, because if you put out in the universe, what are you offering? What value are you bringing and giving to others? The universe will return the favor to you. But I think when you always do the right thing or just do good things, it comes back to you for sure. That's a good point. Very important to focus on, especially where in your journey, it's great to hear your success and hear how happy you are and you're enjoying and you have passion what you do. I think that's so important too.
Thank you. And you have to be able to receive that too.
You do.
Do you know who Chester Elton is?
I do.
Okay. Chester gave me this carrot when I interviewed him in New York, and
Okay.
this gratitude stone right over here that I keep with me. And
Nice.
he told a story about how Marshall Goldsmith got mad at him because Marshall had said, Chester, you're incredible, blah, 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 complimented him. And he'd said, no, you are. And he deflected. And by deflecting, you actually don't get compliments anymore, and you make that person feel as though that wasn't received, right? Because it
Right.
wasn't received. And so if you want to be a giver and be extremely successful, the other skill you have to build besides giving is receiving.
So
David
true.
Belzer, who we're mutually connected with, tells a story about his
Hmm.
mom and how she was the most generous person in the world, but she needed to learn the skill of receiving. And so when we're given a compliment, I offer this as a practical takeaway to anybody listening or watching is just say thank you. You don't have to say you too. You don't have to say, oh, but this person, just say thank you. And it just feels so good when you get to receive that. And that will come back to you. If you can build that habit, that will come back to you in terms of money, in terms of love, everywhere in your life. When you're able to receive, then you can actually give more. My
Hmm.
mentor, Chris Shembra, talks about how grateful he is that he or get paid a lot more money at certain conferences to speak so that he can donate certain ones to different organizations that he cares about for free. He gets in order to give. But he does have to get. You do have to receive in order to give
Hmm.
back. Because at some point, you're going to be in debt of whatever you want to say love, money, thanks. And you don't want to get into that debt. So you do have to learn to receive. And that's an important skill to build. And it starts with just saying thank you and stopping reflecting.
So true. And I interviewed with David as well. And I think my biggest takeaway was also recognizing, like for me, I was raised so I was never expecting anything. I never expected anything. And he pointed out one thing that really, it was eye opening. If you just give and give, you're going to end up at zero. You can't always just give. You have to be able to receive. And for so many years, I was such an independent woman, even as a child, part of my dad's passing, and just being so independent and not relying on anyone else or expecting it. And it's very true. You make such a good point. It's so important. We all need to receive, and it's okay. You don't need to feel guilty, right? It's part of the connection to others as well. Very important. So if you're bringing value, you're able to receive as well. I think
Yeah.
that's so true.
You have to believe you deserve it as well, which takes a lot of work.
It really changes. It's like shifting your mindset, right? The first step is, I think, shifting. Anything else that you want to focus on today that we haven't talked about? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I think it's important that people take time to pause. There is a force that's driving in the world right now of AI and innovation that has always driven our country and is incredible in terms of the things it creates for the world. The thing is, the world has never moved any faster than it has now, but it's never going to move any slower. So if we're waiting for someone to give us permission to slow down because the world is taking a little bit of a break, it's not going to come. The pace that technology is going is like an exponential curve. We're going to keep going faster. We're going to keep outsourcing more. We're going to keep innovating more. We're going to keep getting more optimized. And there's this thing called Jevons paradox. So a lot of people think that by implementing more AI into their lives, they're going to free up time for human connection. They're going to free up time for them to spend more time with the people they love, on the things that they love. But Jevons paradox, in old economics terms, states that time that is freed up is actually replaced with more of the same. And so what's actually happening in the world, and there's been studies on this, look up the workday human connection index. There's been studies that as AI is actually taking over more of our time, we're just replacing it with more of the same tasks. So 43% of people said that they wanted to use AI, the time freed up by AI, to focus on networking and cross-functional team strategy and things like this in these bigger companies that were surveyed. And this is more of a work thing, but it can apply to your life as well. And then only 28% of people were actually using the time for what they said they would. And that 15% gap is expected to continue to increase as AI increases and time increases between AI implementation. So I say all that because as our lives continue to speed up, as we feel like we have more challenges, as we feel like we have more responsibilities, and as we do have more responsibilities, it becomes our responsibility, if we want to continue to live a high quality life, to take time to pause. And that effort that it takes to pause continues to be more as it feels even faster, right? And it's like we're in a hamster wheel and we just have to get off sometimes. And that getting off is hard, but when you do, it allows you to pause. It allows you to reconnect with who you are, what your intentions are for the world. And that's why I always try to take time in the morning to pause and at night. And that is just where I want to leave people because I do think that it's a problem that a lot of people are facing. Whether that work and the thing that they're consumed by is their phone and they feel
Yes,
like they can't get off the hamster wheel of scrolling, or
right.
whether it's productivity and optimization in their actual work, a lot of people in the world right now are consumed by external things that feel like they can't get out of. And it's just about that first step, that first pause will allow you to reconnect with yourself and map out
Mm.
the future the way you want it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I had to make a shift as well when I started my wellness journey, which was a while ago. Let's just say it's not overnight, right? For me, I don't grab my phone. Like the first thing, I'm able to take even 10 minutes to be able to set the frequency for my day, do some praying, focus on myself. How do I feel? And I think you're so right because so many out there, I don't think it matters what age. I think it's there more to harm us than help us, right? It's a catch 22. It's good to have technology, but it is definitely taking over. And I think, like you said, to be able to have that determination and just be aware, it is a very difficult thing if you've never done it. So I challenge anyone out there to try it. Just try it. You can make the shift and maybe just having the intention initially, just think about that. Think about having the intention that you want to make that shift, and you'll get there. It can be challenging if you're addicted to the technology, especially if that's your norm, that's how you start your day. But it can just open up your mind and how you feel and how your body feels, how your spirit feels, and getting outside. I think for me, the biggest one to feel, like you said, just pausing, I have to get out of my own environment. I have to get out of my territory and just go. It doesn't necessarily mean vacation. It can be just being able to go somewhere that's different than where you're at every day. And if that's just getting out in nature, whatever that may be, for many out there in the world, maybe they aren't able to travel far. But I think just getting out of your territory is really helpful because I think that's when things come to me like, oh, I never even thought of this. I kind of want to explore this, or how you feel and you think. I think you find there's things that will come to you when you're just not focused on the technology and all the things. And I find too, like, not everything is technically an emergency. You feel like that's how we're programmed, right? Is to constantly be on that phone or constantly be on your email. It doesn't mean you're not paying attention, but maybe choosing, maybe not every single thing has to be dealt with this second, and prioritizing. Of course, there's going to be things that are important and crucial, but being able to prioritize, that's how I feel like you can introduce self care and focusing on what can I do to shift where I'm at right now if I'm not feeling well in general, right? Just how do I feel?
I love that. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Where can people find you? Would you recommend LinkedIn, Instagram?
I would say right now, LinkedIn and Instagram are the two biggest platforms for me that I'm putting the most into. So, Jack Wagoner, Wagoner, and then I host the Grateful podcast.
Phenomenal. I love hearing your journey, and I hope some listeners out there got some good insight. And check out his podcast, The Grateful Podcast. It'll be great to hear all the different episodes and all the different topics that you're talking about and discussing. And we'll record again in the future. It'll be fun. And maybe in person next time. That'll
Yeah.
be fun. I
Awesome.
appreciate you taking the time. So thanks so much for joining today. Thanks for all the great advice. For I think others in your generation will benefit just to hear your story and hear your perspective.
Thank you so much, Amanda. This was
Thank you, and have a great rest of your day, and until next time. We hope you enjoyed today's episode with Jack Wagner, focusing on gratitude and ambition. Be sure to check out Jack's podcast, The Grateful Podcast, as well as finding him on LinkedIn or Instagram. And that wraps up another inspiring episode of All in Wellness. Thank you for being a part of our community and for tuning in today. We hope you found valuable insights and encouragement to live your life fully and authentically. Remember, the journey to wellness, gratitude, and embracing your faith is ongoing, and we're here to support you every step of the way. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review